Yo, what's up? It's Jay. The UFC currently has a stacked roster with the most talented mixed martial arts fighters in the world. And the most stacked division right now, in my opinion, is the bantamweight division. It's a division that's flooded with talent with some of the most tactically brilliant fighters in the sport. And today I wanted to talk about someone who I believe is one of the best but also underappreciated fighters in the division. And that, of course, is Marlon Chito Vera. In my eyes, the thing that is most special about Chito is his tactics and game planning. He's a fairly inactive fighter strike-wise who almost always gets outstruck by the numbers, and his subtly impeccable defense not only makes him an extremely hard opponent to damage, but also allows him time to think, read, and game plan his attack strategy while in the middle of a fight. He takes his time to figure out what and where his opponent's holes are and how he can exploit them. His impressive defense allows him much more space to find these, but it also encourages his opponents to throw with more activity, which gives Chito more information to work with. He's one of the best tacticians in not only the bantamweight division, but also the UFC as a whole, and today I'm going to break down some of his genius in the octagon. Marlon Vera vs. Dominick Cruz was a great fight, but a very hard one to break down for myself. For the vast majority of this fight, Chito doesn't throw much, and Dominick Cruz's high output was largely ineffective against Chito. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention many of the successes of Dominick Cruz in this fight, like his evasion techniques and some sneaky tricks he used to land on Chito, like leg kicking to off-balance Chito's stance and immediately going forward with a barrage of strikes while Chito is out of position. But what I really want to talk about is Chito's slick defense and the setup to the finishing sequence.
Chito's looking for something now, though. Maybe dangerous if he's extra.
In this sequence, Cruz does what I just mentioned and how he kicks out the lead leg of Chito and springs in while Chito is out of position. This is a good attack from Cruz, but if you look closely, the strikes after the kick from Cruz do not land. Notice how Chito uses his left arm to parry the cross, then gets his arm on the inside of Cruz's long hook to block it, and simultaneously uses his left block to defend against the right hook.
Powerful Chito was when he landed. Oh, well fun, looked like he'd been through a blender.
Chito is very aware of the movement of Dominick Cruz, and you'll see this throughout the fight. When Cruz rushes forward, Chito backs up a lot to keep his range maximized, and he uses his long guard to parry and redirect straight punches while he uses his side block to defend hooks. Chito will also often use a tight side block with his long guard to defend against hooks and uppercuts, and switches between these defenses simultaneously, which is extremely hard to do effectively. I think it's also important to note that Chito's parrying ability is incredible. If any of you watching compete in Muay Thai, kickboxing, or boxing, you'll know the parry is an often used defense, but can be risky because you have to take your hands away from your head, exposing you to hooks, uppercuts, or really anything that comes around the center line. A parry is usually only used once or twice in a sequence, and counter usually follows. But Chito uses an extremely active guard and parries very often while switching between side blocks and implementing head movement, which, as said before, is extremely difficult.
Right now he's waiting. He's waiting.
This clip here is a great example of Chito simultaneously switching between long guard and side guard while implementing head movement. Cruz did a great job of making it difficult for Chito to find his shots tactically in this fight. Watching it over, I couldn't really notice much on how Chito was setting up these knockdowns, and in my eyes they were strikes that were largely not set up and instead were situational advances in which Chito's power was the main factor. However, this was absolutely not the case for the finishing sequence. Dominick Cruz has a long history with unorthodox movement and often moves out of range using this strange head-first swang motion in which his hands are always down. This has long been a technique used by Cruz but was exploited by TJ Dillashaw years ago.
Round two. Oh, nice stick from Cruz. There with a nice jab and a head kick.
This clip is very important, so pay attention. Here, Chito closes the distance in a position where Cruz is very close to the cage, trapping his movement and only giving him one side to exit from. Chito then throws a left hook in an attempt to get Cruz to move out of the way, and because there's a space trap, Cruz can only move to the right of Chito. Cruz then does exactly what Chito is expecting and uses his signature swaying head movement with his hands all the way down, and Chito times a right head kick so that Dominick Cruz will move right into it. This read and tactic from Chito is excellent and gives us insight into what Chito was thinking during the fight. This sequence is the exact sequence that led to Cruz getting knocked out later in the fight, and this lets us know that Chito had this set up very early on in the fight. The only difference in this clip is that Chito turns his hip over too early, which diminishes the power of the kick.
Chito's got to get a little more busy. He's got to get busier. That is the key word there. He's having it.
Notice how Chito closes the distance so that Cruz is closer to the fence. He then throws a right hook this time to get Cruz to sway to the left side, and when Cruz sways to evade, Chito throws a perfect head kick and turns his hips at the right moment, and Cruz gets knocked out cold. Take note of the difference in form between the knockout kick on the top and the unsuccessful attempt on the bottom. In the top image, Chito's hips are aligned with his leg, which gives him a strong base with power, which allows the kick to act almost like a baseball bat, compared to the bottom image where Chito's hips are turned over, which gives his leg leeway and removes the power.
And because of that fighting style, Joe, how much ones? Yeah.
Because they were kind of clean.
But honestly, with that slip off that elbow, which looked like a knockdown, see this round, going forward,
Calling for the lead elbow out of Chito.
Let's take a look at this front kick setup from Chito in the Frankie Edgar fight. Chito wants to land this front kick to the face, and he's going to set it up by digging these hard front kicks to the body to get Frankie to think low.
Game plan for Edgar is to
Here I want you to take note of how Chito throws this front kick to the face, but he doesn't commit. He doesn't throw it with any conviction and purposefully whiffs so he can observe Frankie's reaction to the kick coming up high, but he also does this to get Frankie comfortable with seeing that movement. This type of tactic is called conditioning, and Chito does this at an extremely high level. Pay attention to Frankie's reaction to the kick. He basically doesn't react at all. Frankie's hands are to the sides, completely exposing the underside of the chin. Since Frankie's hands are not in a position to defend, and Frankie is not reacting to this kick, Chito now knows that he can land it. Here near the end of the fight, Chito is ready to go for it. He has the kick to the body set up, and he knows that he can land this front kick to the head. So he throws it upstairs, but he throws it while Frankie is moving backwards and he misses. Since he misses this kick, there's a chance that Frankie Edgar becomes privy to the setup Chito wants. Chito knows this, and because so, he decides to throw it back to the body to get Frankie to think low again. Once Chito thinks that Frankie has forgotten about the front kick to the face, he decides to throw it again. But this time, he pressures Frankie against the cage so he can't move back, and he lands the kick perfectly, knocking Frankie Edgar out.
don't get to look at monitors.
This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Chito Vera's ability, and I'd love to make a part 2 to this video. I enjoyed making this, and I intend on making more Muay Thai and MMA breakdowns, so if you're interested in seeing more, leave a comment letting me know what other fighters or fights you'd like me to talk about. Thanks for watching.
I think if I walk past Talenchai down the street, I would completely underestimate him as being the fighter that he is.